When a tiny cabal seizes power, monarchist, communist, fascist, or corporate, it creates a mafia economy and a mafia state. Trump is not an anomaly. He is the grotesque visage of our collapsed democracy. Trump and his coterie of billionaires, generals, half-wits, Christian fascists, criminals, racists, and deviants. They are what comes afterwards. The creatures that emerge from the devastation with the slime still upon their lips. Let a world collapse in the South or Russia, and there are pure figures of coarse ambition driving their way up from beneath the social bottom. Men to whom moral claims are not so much absurd as incomprehensible. Sons of bushwhackers and music drifting in from nowhere and taking over through the sheer outrageousness of their monolithic force, Howe wrote. They become presidents of local banks and chairmen of party regional committees, and later, a trifle slicked up, they muscle their way into Congress or the Politburo. Scavengers without inhibition. They need not believe in the crumbling official code of their society. They need only learn to mimic its sounds. Trump and those around him believe in one truth, which is whatever they proclaim at the moment, although any such declaration may contradict what they said a few hours before. They are possessed by one idea: conflict. They sanctify violence, misogyny, disdain for empathy, and the self-appointed right to engage in bouts of frenzied rage. These characteristics, they insist, are a sign of strength and virility. Their highest aesthetic is militarism, violence. Without conflict, without enemies real or imagined, their ideological structures and their races collapse into a heap of contradictions and absurdities. Christian fascists are now the vanguard of this emerging American fascism. They ferret out facts and formulas that buttress their peculiar worldview and discard truths that contradict their messianic illusions. They mouth biblical cliches to justify bigotry, misogyny, homophobia, chauvinism, and repression. Propaganda masquerading as ideology. These Christian fascists are singularly incurious. They are linguistically, culturally, and historically illiterate about the Muslim world and about most other foreign cultures. Science and intellectual pursuits, yet they blindly write off 1/5 of the world's population, Muslims, as irredeemable, while they dismiss climate change as a hoax. The inability of white supremacists and Christian fascists to recognize the humanity of others springs from their spiritual and intellectual impoverishment. They mistake their bigotry for honesty. They mistake their ignorance for innocence. They cannot separate fantasy from reality. And such people are, as James Baldwin said, moral monsters. Evil for them is embodied in the dehumanized other. And once the human personification of evil is eradicated, evil itself is supposed to disappear. Except, of course, that as soon as one group of human beings is annihilated, another human embodiment of evil rises to take its place. The Nazis began with the Jews. Our fanatics are beginning with the undocumented and Muslims, and history has shown where they will go from here. The nationalist is by definition an ignoramus, the Yugoslav writer Danilo Kish wrote. Nationalism is the line of least resistance, the easy way. The nationalist is untroubled. He knows or thinks he knows what his values are. That's to say, national. That's to say, the values of the nation he belongs to, ethical and political. He is not interested in others. They are no concern of his. Hell, it's other people, other nations, another tribe. They don't even need investigating. The nationalist sees other people in his own image as nationalists. Like all utopians, these people believe that their agenda is being implemented for our benefit. They are like Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, who oversaw the burning of Giordano Bruni at the stake and who argued that eradicating heretics does them a favor because it saves them from their own damnation. It is impossible to have a rational dialogue with people who view reality through the binary lens of black and white, us and them. They do not recognize the right of dissent. Dissent is at best obstruction and probably truth. Fanatics in power always become inquisitors. Trump has no coherent belief system or coherent ideology, but his ideological vacuum is being filled by the Christian right. What comes next, history has shown, will not be pleasant. A corrupt and inept ruling elite, backed by the organs of state security and law enforcement, will transform workers into serfs. The most benign dissent will be criminalized. The ravaging of the ecosystem will propel us ever closer towards extinction. Hate will, as stagnation and decay continue, call for attacks against Muslims, undocumented workers, African Americans, feminists, intellectuals, artists, dissidents, all of whom will be scapegoated for the country's decline. Magical thinking will dominate our airwaves and be taught in our public schools. Art and culture will be degraded to nationalist kitsch. All the cultural and intellectual disciplines that allow us to view the world from the perspective of the other, that foster empathy, understanding, and compassion, will be replaced by a grotesque and cruel hyper-masculinity and hyper-militarism. Reality, any discourse based on verifiable fact, truth, are under assault. Verbal confusion reigns. Truth and illusion have merged. Mental chaos makes it hard to fathom what is happening.
And its consequences have been a disaster for
we feel trapped
They have greatly
in a hall of mirrors.
expectancy of those of us who live in
Revealed lies are answered
destabilized
with new lies.
have made life unfulfilling.
The rational is countered
To indignities
with the irrational.
widespread psychological suffering. In the third
Cognitive
world,
dissonance
as well, they
prevails.
have inflicted severe damage on
We
the
endure
natural
a
world.
disquieting
The
shame,
development of technology
even
will worsen
guilt.
the situation. It will certainly subject human
Tens
beings
of
to
millions of
And what is
Americans,
witchcraft?
especially women,
When the cross
undocumented workers,
goes upside
Muslims,
down.
and African Americans suffer
bottoms up,
the acute
and the devil
anxiety
laughs.
of being pursued by
Something to think
predators.
about. Wow.
biological system
All
may
this is by
break
design.
down. If it
Demagogues always infect the governed
level of physical and
with their own
psychological
psychosis.
suffering, but only after passing through a long
The lies pour out of the White House like flocks of
at
pigeons.
the cost of permanently reducing
Donald Trump's election victory was a landslide. He had the largest inauguration crowds in American history. 3 million to 5 million undocumented immigrants voted illegally. Climate change is a hoax. Vaccines cause autism. Immigrants are carriers of, quote, tremendous infectious disease. The election was rigged until it wasn't.
Should I try
We don't know
to
who really knocked down the World Trade Center. Torture works. Mexico will pay for the wall, and America will be great again.
for you? Would you say that you
Trump,
try to
a
love me
70-year-old man with
too?
orange-tinted
In your
skin
mind, could
and
you
hair
ever be
that Penn
really
Jillette has
close to
likened
me?
to
I
cotton
can
candy
tell
made
the
of
way you
piss.
smile. If I feel that I could be
Is, as
certain,
Trump
then
often
I
reminds
would
us,
say
quote,
the things
very
I
good looking.
want to say tonight.
He does not read. He knows little of history, politics, law, philosophy, art, or governance, but insists, quote, my IQ is one of the highest, and you all know it. Please don't feel so stupid or insecure. It's not your fault. He goes on to say of the mediocrities he has installed in his cabinet that, quote, they have by far the highest IQ of any cabinet ever assembled. It is an avalanche of absurdities. And this mendacity would be easier to repulse if the problem was solely embodied in Trump. But even in the face of a rising despotism, the Democratic Party and the liberal class refuses to denounce the corporate forces that eviscerated our democracy, impoverished the country, and created Trump. The neoliberal Trump demonizes Muslims, undocumented workers, and the media. The neoliberal Democratic Party demonized Vladimir Putin and FBI Director James Comey. No one challenges corporate power. The warring elites pit alternative facts against alternative facts. All engage in demagoguery. And we will, I fear, be condemned to despotism by Trump and by the cowardice and dishonesty of the liberal class. The order for some employees of several federal agencies, including the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Research Service, the National Park Service, and the Department of Health and Human Services to restrict or cease communication with the press or members of Congress, along with the attempt to impose 10-year felony convictions on 6 reporters who covered the inauguration protests, is part of this campaign to marginalize reality itself and replace it with fantasy. Facts for demagogues depend solely on those who have the power to create them. And the goal of the Trump administration is to create an artificial consistency, an absorbing and endless spectacle that advances its warped perception of the world. It must, as it has day after day, dominate our lives as it reconfigures reality. Fantastic and absurd assertions are treated seriously, a process that over time erodes the power of the rational. Before they seize power and establish a world according to their doctrines, totalitarian movements conjure up a lying world of consistency which is more adequate to the needs of the human mind than reality itself, in which through sheer imagination, uprooted masses can feel at home and are spared the never-ending shocks which real life and real experiences deal to human beings and their expectations. Hannah Arendt. The force possessed by totalitarian propaganda before the movements have the power to drop iron curtains to prevent anyone's disturbing by the slightest reality the gruesome quiet of an entirely imaginary world lies in its ability to shut the masses off from the real world. This assault on fact, on truth, on reality, is empowered by the loss of credibility of our democratic institutions. And it has thrown the country into an existential as well as an economic crisis. The courts, universities, and press are no longer trusted by tens of millions of Americans who correctly see them as organs of the corporate elites. These institutions are traditionally the mechanism by which a society is unable to unmask the lies of the powerful, critique ruling ideologies, and promote justice. Because Americans have been bitterly betrayed by their institutions, the Trump regime can attack the press as the opposition party, threaten to cut off university funding, taunt a federal jurist as a so-called judge, and denounce a court order as outrageous. The decay of democratic institutions is the prerequisite for the rise of authoritarian or fascist regimes. And this decay has given credibility to a pathological virus. The Trump administration, according to an Emerson College poll, is considered by 49% of registered voters to be truthful, while the media are considered truthful by only 39% of registered voters. Once American democratic institutions no longer function, once large sectors of the public believe, as Trump says, that the press is the enemy of the American people, reality becomes whatever absurdity the White House issues. Most of the rules of democracy are unwritten. These rules determine public comportment and ensure respect for democratic norms, procedures, and institutions. Trump has, to the delight of his supporters, rejected this political and cultural etiquette. And Arendt noted that when democratic institutions collapse, it is, quote, easier to accept patently absurd propositions than the old truths which have become pious analogies. Chatter of the liberal ruling elites about our democracy is itself an absurdity. Vulgarity, with its cynical dismissal of respected standards and accepted theories that she wrote, infects political discourse, and this vulgarity is mistaken for courage and a new style. Trump's theatricality works. He forces the press and the public to repeat his lies, inadvertently giving them credibility. He is always moving. He is always on display. He has no fixed belief system. Trump, as he consolidates power and adopts the ideology of the Christian right, seamlessly forges the magical thinking of the Christian right with his own magical thinking. Idiocy, self-delusion, megalomania, fantasy, government repression will come wrapped in images of the Christian cross and the American flag. Corporate state, hostile and indifferent to the plight of the citizens, has no emotional pull among the public. It has long presented political candidates as celebrities, campaigns, askew issues to make people feel good about candidates themselves. Ideas are irrelevant. Emotional euphoria is paramount. The voter is only a prop in this political theater. Politics is anti-politics. It is reality television. And Trump proved better at this game than his
Every day I work so hard, bringing home my hard-earned pay. Try to love you, baby, but you push me away. I don't know where I'm going, but I know just where you've been. I wanna love you, baby. I got no words. it's not true. I wanted a woman never bargained for you. Sweet little baby, say what you will. Your tongue wax so much when I send you to hell.